Project Search.
Hey y'all, it's Danny again. Today, I'm bringing you a presentation that will be a review of the material we've covered over the last couple of weeks. As you watch this presentation, if you find that you're having difficulty remembering any of the topics that I bring up, go back and rewatch the videos for those topics. That way, you'll be ready for the big quiz and review game that'll be done game show style. I know you want to do well on that. One of the things we talked about was how it's important to build up a bank account of goodwill. We used the example of a piggy bank that you may have had as a child. And the idea is that you remain very professional on most days, treat people respectfully, get all your work done, arrive to work on time, all those things that a good employee does, so that when you have a bad day, people will be more likely to forgive you for it. So your coworkers have positive thoughts about you and they go into your goodwill piggy bank. You get to work on time, you're polite, try your best, help your coworkers, admit mistakes, listen actively, and eventually all those good thoughts will go into your goodwill piggy bank. We also talked about the dream job concept. The dream job is the type of job that you might daydream about, or the kind of job that we think we want when we're little kids. Fancy things like astronaut or movie star. The reason we talked about it is because we want to figure out what it is that makes that job your dream job and see if we can find jobs that are actually available in the community that have some of the characteristics of your dream job. Sometimes people end up actually doing their dream job, but most of the time people don't quite land in the job that was their dream job. What we want to try to do is find a job that has a lot of those qualities that the dream job has. Another thing that we spent some time talking about was the work family tree. In the work family tree, we retrace what our relatives have done for work. Now, the purpose of that is to see if it gives us any ideas about types of jobs we might like. We start with our grandparents at the roots, we go up to our parents, the low branches, and ourselves and our siblings go on the top branches. When you get done with your family tree, you can make it look nice by adding some leaves or a bird, but that's optional. We spent some time talking about the ADA, or Americans with Disabilities Act, which was passed in 1990. It's federal civil rights legislation, and it's meant to protect people from discrimination based on a disability. And it protects them in a lot of different areas of life, but we focus on employment because this is Project Search. One of the many things that the ADA does is it guarantees that people can get a reasonable accommodation in order to do a job that they can otherwise do because they're qualified to do it. It's been 30 years now since the passage of the ADA. The goal of the ADA is full inclusion of people with disabilities in all aspects of American society. So for 30 years now, this legislation has been in place and been the law of the land. And there are certainly a lot of people out there who would say that the ADA has made a big difference in their lives. We talked about disability disclosure. The reason to disclose a disability is because if you do, then your employer is required by the ADA to provide you with a reasonable accommodation. We talked about the fact that you can disclose that you have a disability at several different points during the employment process. You can disclose that you have a disability when you apply for a job, during a job interview, or even after you've started working. We talked about who you can disclose your disability to, how to do it, that you should not disclose too soon, and that you shouldn't disclose too late. Your disclosure of a disability to your employer is required by law to be kept confidential, meaning they cannot share your information with anyone else except for those who need to know about it in order to provide you an accommodation. We spent a session exploring the Job Accommodation Network, or JAN, which is a service of the Department of Labor and is a very useful tool when you're trying to figure out what kind of accommodation you might be able to use in order to perform a certain job. There's a good chance that you will use the Job Accommodation Network yourself when it's time to do your job search and or when you get hired, so that you can figure out what kind of accommodation you might need for yourself in order to do a given job. We talked about snacking and vending machines. We talked about the fact that a lot of the food in vending machines is a lot more expensive than healthier choices you can find at a grocery store. We talked about the reasons why people end up snacking, whether they get their snack from a vending machine or not, that the reason why people snack a lot of the time is not because they're hungry, but because they're bored, perhaps, because they're nervous, and a few other things. One session we spent talking about rights and responsibilities. Under the ADA, which we talked about previously, if you have a disability, your rights are protected. So we talked about the fact that all American citizens have rights, but we also all have responsibilities. We went through a list of various rights and the responsibilities that are matched with them. It's very important to know what your rights are, but it's also very important to know what your responsibilities are as a citizen. More recently, we talked about the concept of time theft. Time theft is when an employee accepts pay, money, for work that they didn't actually do, or for time that they didn't actually spend doing their work. We talked about the different ways that this can occur. So it can happen in several different ways. We talked about the fact that the consequences of time theft can be disciplinary action right on up to termination. So it is a very serious thing. We spent a session discussing what to do if you decide that you need to change jobs. Included in our discussion were the reasons why you might want to leave a job in the first place. So there were environmental factors, things like wanting better pay and better benefits and more time off, and the desire to try new things. We also talked about the fact that before you decide to change jobs, you should make sure that you've done your best to make your current job work for you. So there are several steps we talked about, including trying to overcome challenges, seeing if you can get accommodations if you need them, getting advice from your job coach or assistance with any issues from your job coach, talking about the matter with family members and other people you trust. We talked about how important it is that if you decide to switch jobs, that you actually switch to a job that addresses the needs that you had. For example, if you have to sit down a lot at your current job and you want a job where you can move around more, then make sure that you're searching for jobs that will meet that need so that you're not sitting around, but instead you're moving around. We talked about the fact that you should give 2 weeks notice as a professional courtesy rather than just saying, I quit. Give a written letter of resignation. And there were several reasons that you should give 2 weeks notice: to be courteous to coworkers, so that you can have a chance to return to the company in the future, to maintain a good reputation, to not miss out on the financial benefits of giving 2 weeks notice, and to be able to use your employer as a good reference in the future. That was a very quick recap of the material we've covered for the last couple of weeks. As I said at the beginning, you can go back and rewatch any videos that you need to in order to be ready for our big game show quiz and review thing.
Toodaloo.